Hi everyone, I'm Jasleen. I'm an analyst in the MedTech data analysis team in DHSC, and I've been leading on the PIM project. So the main purpose of today's presentation is mainly just to provide you with a bit of an overview of the PIM project. It's been referenced by most of the previous presenters. So PIM stands for Product Information Management and is a widely used tool for centralizing product-related data and streamlining the process of updating that information. As Frankie mentioned, this is a collaborative work stream, and we're trying to work with all of those who have previously spoken to try and produce a system that is helpful for them and their onward users, but also trust and industry. The idea of PIM for medical device data stems from over a decade ago in the NHS e-procurement strategy, where it identified the requirements for a single database to effectively manage product information. So I'll start with a bit of a brief background around the problem we're aiming to solve, and then I'll describe what we did during our alpha stage, which is just finished, and the learnings we took from it, and then I'll kind of cover off our next steps. So currently, information sharing between medical devices about medical device data in the health system is inefficient, which makes it quite time consuming to get basic and essential information about medical devices. And this can include just core data that is needed by multiple professions for multiple uses. So we're trying to develop a system that helps to streamline this current process. So as you can see from the diagram on the left, that the current process involves a lot of back and forth between those requesting and supplying data, and it often uses various different methods. And we hope to build a system in the future where PIM is the vehicle that eases and streamlines this process. So before we started our alpha, we did an in-house discovery, which involved speaking to organizations across the health system. And from this, we found that there was a clear need for a central data repository. And through our engagement, we better understood that there's currently a pain point around obtaining essential and good quality information. There's currently pockets of useful data that currently exist and continues to emerge in places, but it's not being stored centrally and made available to all of those who benefit from accessing it. And there's various other products, platforms, and services that PIM needs to intersect with, and some of those have been mentioned previously today. And so PIM needs to be developed in a way that has interoperability and allows for mechanisms of data exchange between those systems. We also knew that we wanted to support the approach of the collect one, use often. So we kind of wanted to use as much existing data as possible. We also knew that any developed system would need to easily integrate into existing systems without introducing legislative change. And we also knew that data providers were going to need to be sufficiently incentivized to engage in the collaborative curation of the data. So as I just mentioned, we've just finished a 12-week alpha program, which focused on exploring some of our core assumptions and trying to identify a potential solution to take forward to develop the system. And this work focused on three core elements: so user research, data exploration, and content design. So I'll go through some of the key activity that happened in each of these stages in the next couple of slides. So for our user research, we used a number of methods, so interviews, workshops, surveys, in order to speak to a wide range of potential consumers. So we spoke to over 29 data consumers from 12 different organizations, 15 data providers from 8 organizations, one data standard participant, and then 26 wider stakeholders across the health and care system. So I won't go through all of these kind of bubbles in detail, but these represent the array of professions that we spoke to within these organizations from both the consumer and provider side. So it shows the vast kind of use case for PIM, and trying to develop a system that supports the onward use of the data for all of these cases. So we started with the MHRA product register, and then we looked at other data sources that were available to try and see how we can match them to create a richer data source from the accessible ones available. And we also identified how potential data flows would work. So we tested different options with manufacturers about how they would upload their data into PIM via various methods. So we looked at API access, bulk bulk spreadsheet upload and web forms, and we try to get kind of gauge how different people might respond to different methods for uploading the data. And so this diagram just shows the kind of environment and the context for PIM, highlighting some of the systems that would initially depend on it. So data consumers will look to use PIM to find data about medical devices where data is currently incomplete or inaccurate, and they may request that data is added or amended through PIM. A manufacturer would use PIM to add additional data that is not currently available in response to requests from consumers. Inventory management systems within the NHS might use the data for various tasks, and they might want to synchronize the reference data for devices and products from the PIM on a regular schedule. And the data provided to and held by MHRA would be used as the base data for PIM, and it will we're supporting a way that will only any of the MHRA data should only be modified via the MHRA systems directly. So for our content design, the team firstly started off with some wireframe diagrams, and they focused on 3 stages of the user journey. So we focused on the homepage, the search result, and the product page. And then we developed a working prototype, which we then tested with users. And so this page includes some screenshots of what this would look like. So we first tested how the user experience was around finding, viewing, and accessing the data. So this kind of screenshot shows you on the left-hand side just kind of the landing page. So it kind of gives you a brief description of the data that you should expect to find in PIM. And then there's just a standard search bar, and you can use the search bar to search using various terms. So things like GMDN code, the UDI, manufacturer name, product name. And then you should get to kind of a standard search result page where you have just kind of like high level information about your initial searches. And then on the right hand side of that search page, there are different filters. We kind of iterated that through user research around how people might want to kind of filter the data to get more specific to their needs. They also tested how users might request new data or flag data errors. So this kind of shows you once you're at a landing page for a product, you might realize that there's additional data that's not currently shown. So you might want to request new information. And we tested how users might do that. And then that would send a request directly to a manufacturer. Also, we realized that there might be a it might be a collaborative effort to try and increase the quality of the data. So there might be a reason why someone thinks there's something wrong with the data. So we've also explored the options for progressing. So first and foremost, this work and the user engagement has validated that there's a high user need for developing a single source of the truth to be developed for medical device data. And so we've learned that there's a broad range of users with a variety of use cases and user needs. So data consumers can span over multiple professions and organizations. And the need for medical device data doesn't relate to just the acquisition stage, but it relates to the whole entire life cycle of a medical device. And they're also interested across the whole patient pathway. For data providers, we've also learned that there's a variety in the number of devices a supplier has in the UK market and the type of device that someone can supply, and also their attitude to PIM. And we also learned that the data and people's information needs can both change over time. And so as data changes over time, there may be a limit to how much trust and suppliers are willing to reuse data from and into a central database. So we need PIM to kind of develop in a dynamic way to try and deal with these things. So finally, from our gathering of user needs and our data source appraisal, we learned that currently there's no existing data source that contains all the information that people require. And even when you combine multiple data sources, we have a more useful and complete data set, but there is still a large amount of required data that's not currently in any data source. and is currently only provided on demand by suppliers. And so, given these learnings, we are suggesting that PIM should collate medical device data from multiple sources, but also collect data itself. It should enable consumers to access data via various means. So, it should have a user interface, it should be able to download the data and provide a direct API access. PIM should enable data consumers to flag data errors and request missing data. And PIM should enable data providers to proactively submit data directly to PIM, but update the regulatory data by updating MHRA, and respond to data consumers' errors and flags directly through PIM. So I'll just finish off with very brief timelines. So as I mentioned, we've just finished our alpha stage. So now we'll go through a period of kind of speaking to our stakeholders and trying to distill the information from our alpha and kind of the learnings that we've got and the recommendations that we're taking forward to beta. And then we're going to also be preparing the business case for the beta. And then we need to kind of procure another supplier to try and help us build this beta. So we're likely that hopefully will kick off in around November. And so that will be about a 6 months program of developing, which is what we call private beta, which is where we develop our minimum viable product, build it and kind of test it for real. But this will only be tested with a limited user cohort. And then you go through to public beta, which is when you open it all up to all users. But then as you open it up to more people, then there's obviously going to be more bugs and things that you have to fix. So it'll be a continuous process of iterating and fixing problems. And then we'll eventually, hopefully, get to a stage where it's live and being continuously improved. And I'll stop there. Yeah, I'm open to any questions. And also, if people are interested in kind of joining our stakeholder group or learning more about PIM or want to link up, then I'm very happy for people to reach out directly to me. And sorry about this continuous disconnecting.